Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe, as you hold out the word of life, in order that I may boast on the day of Christ, that I did not run or labor for nothing. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. For everyone looks out for his own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know that Timothy has proved himself, because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. I hope, therefore, to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. And I am confident in the Lord that I myself will come soon. But I think it is necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. For he longs for all of you, and is distressed because you heard he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, and almost died. But God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore, I'm all the more eager to send him, so that when you see him again, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. Welcome him in the Lord with great joy, and honor men like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ, risking his life to make up for the help you could not give me.
What do you think is more important? To tell people the gospel or live a godly life among them? My friend Robert had been working at an engineering firm for 5 years, and at his leaving party, one of his colleagues stood up and said, "Rob, we all agree that you're the most likable person we've ever worked with. You've got such integrity and patience." And then he said something that made Robert, as a Christian, feel like he'd missed a 5-year-long opportunity. He said, "We were trying to work out what it was that makes you so special. We decided you must be a Buddhist." I knew another guy who worked for a travel company. He did tell his colleagues that he was a Christian, but they all knew that along with everyone else in the office, he cheated on his expenses. So what do you think is more important? To tell people the gospel or live a godly life among them?
Paul says that as Christians, we should shine like stars in the universe. We do that, he says, by holding out the word of life. In other words, by telling people the gospel, telling them about Jesus Christ. "I am the light of the world," said Jesus. "Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life."
So shining like stars is about telling people the gospel. But it's not just about that. It's about living the gospel too.
Stars stand out from the darkness around them. And that's the way Christians should be, standing out from the world we live in. The gospel should shine from every part of our lives, not just what we say.
That's why Paul says, do everything without complaining or arguing. The Philippian Christians couldn't stand out from the world around them if they were complaining and arguing just like everyone else. And things haven't changed much. We love to complain and argue, especially us British. The top British tour operators recently did a survey to see if people were enjoying their vacations. One person actually wrote, "No one told us there'd be fish in the sea. The children were startled." Another person complained that there wasn't any air conditioning outside. And another person complained it took us 9 hours to fly to Jamaica from England. It only took the Americans 3. We love to grumble and whine and nitpick. And like the Israelites in the desert, as well as grumbling against each other, we can easily start grumbling against our leaders and grumbling against God. But Christians are not to be like that, says Paul.
If we are like that, then we're not shining like stars, we're disappearing like black holes. And our friends, our family, our work colleagues are not going to need a telescope to see that Jesus doesn't seem to be making a difference in our lives. But if we shine like stars, if we stand out in the right way, then the gospel shines too. And here's the equation that lies behind all this. Paul says, "Continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose."
Did you see those two things together? Verse 12, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. In other words, you work. Verse 13, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. In other words, God works. Now, this isn't a miscalculation. Paul meant to write exactly what he wrote.
When you look at things front on, from your perspective, you are the one making the decisions, fighting sin, living for Christ, looking to the interests of others, contending for the gospel. But all the time you're doing that, it's actually God who is working in you and through you to make it all happen. And often it's only when you look back at things afterwards that you can clearly see that was God working in me to change my will and give me the desire to act according to his good purpose.
And that is no small thing. The fact that God himself is actually at work in you as a Christian should motivate you to work out your salvation with what Paul calls fear and trembling. There's an awe and a reverence we should feel towards God that should make us very serious about obeying him. Now, when we hear Paul saying, work out your salvation, it's vital we don't hear him saying, work for your salvation. That single word makes all the difference, because you can't work for your salvation. Christ already has. Our salvation does not depend on our work at all. It depends entirely on Jesus' finished work on the cross. People's lives are ruined, sometimes eternally, when they misunderstand that. So let me say it again. You cannot work for your salvation. Christ already has. However, once we are saved, then our salvation will begin to work itself out in lots of ways. It will become visible in every area of our lives. It'll work itself out in our relationships, at our place of work, in the way we talk, in the way we spend our money and our time. And that's what Paul means by work out your salvation.
As you obey Christ, your salvation works itself out, becomes visible in your life. It's you working out all the implications of what you believe.
And notice Paul says, as you have obeyed not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence. It's so easy for us to start leading double lives. Instinctively, we're on our best behavior when we're in church or with Christian friends, but what about in their absence? How good are we at obeying Christ during the week when we're away from church?
How we live shows the world whether Jesus really matters. How we live shows whether the gospel we hold out really makes a difference.
Paul ends this part of his letter by giving us two glowing examples of people who are working out their salvation and shining like stars. Timothy and Epaphroditus both care deeply about the well-being of others, even at the expense of their own, and both of them work hard for the gospel without complaining and arguing. Paul describes Timothy as serving with him in the work of the gospel, and Epaphroditus as his fellow worker and fellow soldier. In fact, Epaphroditus had taken a journey of many hundreds of miles over many weeks just so that he could take care of Paul's needs. And apparently he almost died for the work of Christ, and yet he longs to make the return journey back to Philippi with Paul's letter. Had Epaphroditus not worked out his salvation like this, our Bibles would be minus a book.
So when people look at us during the week, what do they see? Do they see people eager to tell others the gospel and transparently living a godly life among them? Do they see people like Timothy, people like Epaphroditus, who even now, as we read about them 2,000 years on, shine like stars in the universe?